Yeah, well, we've talked about doing a recap of the season for like 2 years now, doing one of these, and we figured, well, let's actually do one now since we got a little bit of time and we're not waiting until like shed season to even start talking about it.
Well, I can start out, and I mean, I think I can give my everybody saw some videos, and maybe not everybody, but the season was a little bit of a disarray. I mean, we had you having a baby, and then sounded like I was going to be rolling down there a little, so not solo, but Stein and Bate coming with me. And we typically do our work trip in September. Well, that got thrown into a tailspin uh, early August as I had a couple mild heart attacks. And so that kind of put a little damper, pushed things back. I had big plans. I was going to hunt Indiana, Michigan, all kicking off, but I had to get that work trip out of the way. And that ended up getting pushed back into October, like that second weekend. And then which worked out just fine, but it just seemed like we were a little bit of disarray. I mean, I'm sure you felt the same way with
Well,
kind of
for
being.
for as much as for as little preparation as we had going into the season between usually we get at least one work trip in. Season turned out all right. It was just a weird season because I had my second kid was born in late September, so didn't do any early season hunting. And then you had your heart attack. We didn't have any work trips. We didn't make it to Missouri for any work trips. Really, no work was getting done on your Michigan farms either around then. And it's like we're just kind of scrambling, trying to figure out what we're gonna do for hunting this year. But it all worked out fine. It's just like the beginning of the year was a little bit of a whirlwind, especially from my side. I'm like, all right, I'm stuck here in Tennessee. I got a new baby. I got a 2 year old. Where am I gonna hunt around here? Not the best year for me to give up my lease either. But dude, as you know, I had so many issues with that lease last year that I'm like, I'm not paying for it again. It
Yeah,
was
you had like
terrible.
a
It was terrible. It
public
was.
land, private land.
I had an 80-acre piece that it seemed like I had side by sides rolling through every single day, dogs going through. I had a horse
So
come through when I was hunting. A guy and a horse walk through the middle of the property one of the days that I was there hunting last year, and I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I'm like, I'm not doing it anymore. So I was planning on hunting public, but just with how everything lined up with the new baby is like I'm gonna stick around home. I'm gonna build up the brownie points and then take off to Missouri come the rut. And I had a long trip down to Missouri this year. I was there a day or two before you guys, and then
yeah,
uh I figured that was just the best way to do it for this year.
hunted hard though. I mean, that was saying like, well, and it did all work out. Obviously, we both tagged some deer and we had good hunts. I mean, I didn't hunt very long, but you hunted a little longer than I did, but still ended up with both nice bucks and saw a lot of bucks. And I thought the season actually turned out really well. I said that I guess when Coach Stein and I were coming back, and I said I just feel like we have nothing's prepared. I feel like I'm ill prepared. Michigan was in disarray, like you said, up at my dad's there, and I had planned on hunting some private or public land around us, and never got to that just because I just didn't. When you start going down to Indiana, and then you take a 4 or 5 day trip down to Missouri, and on a weekend, chews up a lot of your time that you're going to get out there. And I had big plans to go to Indiana, a couple different times, and
Right.
it just time is tough when you're working. You got families, and especially when I wasn't real sure about my health at the time. Going down by myself, but I'm pretty confident now. This upcoming season will be a little different, but you
Yeah,
know,
this year should be good. I mean, we got big plans or whatever, but I think before we jump into that, let's actually recap the season. You want to just start from the beginning as far as hunting goes? I mean, I guess I'll kind of lead it since you hunted a lot more than I did, but um you started off in Indiana, right? You were down there opening weekend,
yes,
and you were on a new public piece this year. Um I think just what northern Indiana is where you're at.
yep, yep. Actually, really fairly easy for us to get to. Not easy, but not a 9 hour trip like we have in Missouri there. So it ends up being
Right.
I can just scoot down for even for a weekend if I really wanted to.
Right. So this piece, what you went down and scouted it spring or summer?
Spring shed season.
Okay.
Didn't find any sheds, but it was a great time to get down there. It looked like it had been hammered by people, and I actually made it down there fairly early in March. But apparently, I need to go here in the next couple of weeks to get down there because I see they've had some pretty nice weather, so I'm sure the snow's pretty much gone down there. But
Right.
I'll probably be making a trip down there in the coming weeks. Try to get down there in February. But yeah, we went down a lot of ag. You know, what I think it's like 7 or 8,000 acres or something like that. I mean, it's
Yeah,
a
big
pretty
piece.
big piece. Interesting. You know, it seems like people kind of hunt the edges. I was one of the biggest things that I think you and I always talk about when we're hunting public is we're marking everybody's tree stands so we can kind
Mhm.
of know where not to go. And that's what I was doing when I walked. We went down then in September. Uh, my buddy and I, Coach Maddox there, and we scouted it a little bit, just a little preparation. And that's where I was marking tree stands. Apparently, you can just drive out there. You can put they got 1 day or 2 days or one weekend that you can go out there and throw your tree stands up. And there was plenty of those.
You can actually
So
drive on. You could drive on the public to put your stands out.
yeah, they have one day or one weekend you can drive out and put your tree stands up.
No
So
kidding.
there's a ton of ladder stands. I was just shocked by how many
I,
stands I found.
I've never heard of that on public land where you can actually drive out on the piece.
Yeah, I didn't either. We talked to the DNR officer that was stationed at that check-in point.
Wow. Well, I
Yeah,
mean, actually, that's good to know because if you're going to go back, the best time to do it is like the weekend after that, and
yeah,
just like you said, run through or walk through as much as you can just to see where everyone's stands are. Start knocking off locations where guys are already have their sets, whether they're for bow or for rifle. But that's kind of a good little tidbit of information to know if you're going to hunt. I
yeah.
wonder
And
if that's
it's
I wonder
pretty
if that's
crazy out there.
every I wonder if that's every FWA in Indiana or if it's just maybe that one specifically.
Sound like it was everywhere. Sound like you could
Really?
do it. I'm not 100%, but I'll have to look and see. But he made it sound like it was pretty normal, and it was they always have it. And he said it's just nuts out there. It's
No
like Black
kidding.
Friday for hunters.
That's a good piece of information. No, I had no clue about that. And obviously I've hunted Indiana a couple years, but I never heard of that, even down in the piece that I've hunted a couple times.
Yeah, I didn't. That was the first time I ever heard it. Although I've only been hunting in Indiana a couple of years, but it was
Right.
uh it was interesting to hear that, and I could see because we could see tracks like people were driving out there, and we couldn't believe how far back some of the ladder stands were getting, and so when we heard that, it made more sense that guys are being able to haul everything back there. So
Yeah,
it
it makes
was
a lot of sense.
so we did that, and that was a good piece of information because in the spring I got all the information. I was trying to cover as much ground as I could. I think I walked like 16 miles that day. And then when
What
we went back down in the fall, that was nice because then I could get where is everybody hunting and be able to get away from people and just that was probably more critical than finding deer sign.
Yeah. Well, so when you guys went in the fall, what was it, a long weekend? You did 3, 4, 5 days, something like that?
Yeah, it was like 4 day, 5 day. I think we 4.5 days. We went down like on a Wednesday night, hunted Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Came back Sunday afternoon.
So
Good hunt. It's fun.
other than
Hot.
avoiding the crowds, what were you looking for when you got down there? Were you focusing in on ag since it was the beginning part of the season, or were you trying to get back into the timber a little bit?
Well, this year was a little weird because it was so dry down there. The beans were brown. Corn was turned. They were already harvesting everything down there this when we were down there early October. So yeah, I mean, initially when we first talked about hunting this piece, it was yeah we're going to hunt ag,
Hmm.
and then ended up being more or less I was hunting pinch points, travel corridors, and just some bedding area. And I think in the one, they've got a lot of fallow fields out there, real tall, and it seemed like the deer like to travel through that. There was more pressure than I anticipated, but it wasn't anything terrible.
Right.
Just it's hard because you got to walk almost every trail, every little square inch to make sure there's not a stand around you. I think I hunted one spot where I saw that 6 point,
Yep.
and then the next morning I'm up and I go to the same spot because I left my stuff up there. And the next morning somebody must have came off private, climbed in a ladder stand, and because I never saw him, I got out there really early, and I see some kid over to my right, and I'm thinking, how the hell did they get in there? And they ended up walking out. I don't know. Maybe they came in really early. I mean, I thought I got in fairly early, but they must have got in there real early because they ended up walking by me as I was tearing my set down. And yeah, I didn't see any deer that morning, but ironically, because the kid was down. I must have been taking a pee. I don't know what they were doing, but father and two sons. So I walked over and found their ladder was probably, I don't know, 70 yards away from me. So, the joys
You
of
didn't see their
public.
you didn't see their headlamp or anything when they came in?
Nothing, nothing. So
Oh
I
my
don't know how they
gosh.
came in. Really. I have no idea. I mean, obviously they must have walked in somewhere along there, but they must have got in there well earlier than I did.
Right.
So they would have
But
never seen me come in.
that's that's the joys of public land, though. I mean, it seems like no matter where you go when you're hunting public, you're gonna run into people, and it's not a big deal. I mean, it's just like if you see them,
No.
just avoid them. Or if like you actually get the chance to talk to them, I usually am just like, hey, I'm gonna go. I'm planning on going over here. Where are you going? And if you guys are going to the same spot, someone just choose somewhere else and be nice and
Yeah.
move on. It's nothing to get pissed about. You got enough ground there to cover. It's like just
Uh, I
let the
ran into a
boots hit the
couple of
dirt
young
and go.
kids, those younger guys that I ran into. They were funny because I could see they were a little nervous about getting their stuff ready, and they didn't really want. I was getting my stuff ready, and they weren't. I kept looking over at them to try to engage a little bit and maybe find out where they were going, and they wouldn't even look at me. I finally ended up just breaking the ice and say, "Hey guys, what do you think about hunting?" And they're the ones that are asking about the saddle and stuff like that. But they're really cool guys, and they're just down there. So I let them pick where they're going. I said, I don't really have a spot, so you just tell me. And I said, I got a couple other areas in mind that I can go to. So it's just about communicating and hopefully that, and they were mobile too. So it wasn't like they were sold on one area or not, but I
I think
let them.
most all guys are cool with it. It's like you run into guys. It's like just talk to them, figure out where everyone's going to go, and that way you're not on top of each other. And it always seems to work out fine. Sure, you might get one guy who's a dick or whatever that will get pissed off if you're going somewhere else, and at that point, just say, screw it, do what you want, buddy, and then move on. But
Yeah.
there's enough ground everywhere for the most
I,
part where you can just get up and go.
it was hard too because you're trying to hunt. You know what it is, and it's hard. You're trying to hunt an area, and you start hunting. You think you've got it figured out, and you get in there, and then you again best laid plans. I thought ag for sure was going to be my ticket. Well,
Hmm.
everything's getting cut or dried up, so they're really not out there eating any of the greens. The corn's getting cut. I mean, that was dry as popcorn fart. Everything was just so I had to throw everything I thought I was going to be able to do out the window and end up just hunting some sign. There was some scrapes starting to pop up along field edges. And I started just hunting some more or less cover just because I saw so much pressure we had there and, trying to find some bedding area. And I was going to hunt the timber a little more, but I ended up just hunting some pinch points, some figures, and it was basically trying to find the cover where they might be at. And they were moving through that area. So that was a good move. Coach
Any
Maddox said
acorns? Any acorns?
there was acorns, yeah, and that's where a lot of the focus was just getting into some of the oaks.
Yeah, that's what I figure. If you got, I mean, if it's raining acorns pretty good, I on public, I'd sit back in the timber, at least try to find any hot trees that are dropping. But
Yeah,
I think you got
I
a
would,
better chance. I think you got a better chance at that than
yeah,
getting out on the ag field somewhere, unless it's like a bumper acorn crop year and it's like there's acorns everywhere. The deer don't seem to move a whole lot because they got food everywhere.
we hunted only kind of two sections there, never really branched out too much. Just because
How big are the sections that you guys are kind of bouncing back and
oh,
forth
several,
between?
probably just, I mean, I'm probably pushing 1,000 acres easily.
Okay. I
So
mean,
I mean, they're
That's
big.
huge. That's huge to cover that in 5 days, even if you're just bouncing around hunting spots, different
Yeah,
spots.
we noticed the one section it got hammered pretty hard,
Hmm.
and that was the one that had the most ag on it.
Okay.
And I think I walked it last year or last spring, and I liked it, but I wasn't. I had kind of done a little research, and they were talking about how bad those a couple sections were, and they get pounded pretty good even during archery. So tried to avoid those and some of the areas that didn't have a lot of vehicles on it.
Where we hunted in the past, well,
You
let's
had good.
say I've hunted that piece once before, and then you and I hunted it back in 23. And that piece down in southern Indiana, the first year I was there, I shot a 10 point on day one. And it was great. I mean, I saw that was the night one that I shot that deer, but the morning I saw 15 deer and 4 bucks or whatever. Um, but we went back 2 years later and it was like ghost town. I mean,
Yeah.
we went half of our trip without even seeing a deer. You went basically up until the last sit and didn't even see a deer. Um,
Mm-hmm. Well, I
and that
saw a
was
deer the first night, and
Oh,
then
that's
didn't
right.
see any deer for the rest of the trip.
That's right. I saw a bunch. I saw 6 or 7
Yeah.
does on the last day, but I mean, I saw a couple bucks early on, but then I think we both had a 3 day stretch. I mean, you more than that,
Yeah.
but I had a 3 day stretch where I didn't see anything, and we were covering ground. We were scouting midday. It wasn't like
Mhm.
we weren't taking a lot of time off, but um, yeah, that piece was rough. I don't think we'd be going back to that one anytime soon.
I'd be hard pressed to get back there. I had a not a so great experience.
No. But so
So
this piece you guys were on, you saw a deer just about every sit, right?
every single sit, I saw at least a deer
Okay.
movement. It
And you
didn't
saw
time
you saw
multiple.
one you saw one good buck or two when you were there.
Uh, just the 6 point, and I think
Hey, I'm
I
saying that
was
was a good buck. That's a big 6 point.
that was a big 6 point. It got me. I could see it from a distance, so I mean, it was probably not one of the nicer 6 points I've ever seen.
What I remember from watching your footage, he came up out of like one of those fallow fields, right? Was he
He
bedded
did.
out there in the field?
I'm assuming so, just because he just all of a sudden appeared out, and it was a good distance in front of me. I had a really good look, a vantage point of that field, so I'm assuming he was bedded down in there in the
How
middle of
big was
that thing. It's
how
pretty
how
big.
big how big was that field, if you had to
Oh, it was
guess?
easily a couple hundred yards long, probably a
Okay.
80 to 100 yards wide. It was a huge field,
Okay.
and I mean
Yeah, it's
it's
pretty.
tall.
And was there, and I'm assuming you were sitting on like a finger or something that was like
Mm,
wrapping around that field. Was there ag on the opposite side of you?
there was, yeah,
So was
beans
he,
in that
so he
fallow
had he
field.
had he had been working from that field to the ag there at
Yeah,
night when you saw him.
yeah. That piece has, I mean, that piece has ag everywhere. So I mean, it reminds me of a piece down in Missouri that I used to hunt. Very,
Hmm.
it's very similar to it, and has a ton of ag on it. And other than the fact Missouri, this piece of Missouri, it was really rolling hills, huge hills, but a lot of ag on it. And same with this one. So you could just hunt little fingers like that and see a lot of deer.
And you saw that 6 point. He was kind of
Oh,
working through for a while, right?
yeah, it came right up to the scrape line I was sitting on. So it was kind of cool to see him come in. I don't know if he's going to work the scrape, but he was definitely interested in it until he saw somebody dangling from a tree.
Did he pick you off?
Yeah, I think he saw something and he just didn't like it. So he is in the video, he kind of backs out of there and he just goes back into the fallow field. But he doesn't like tear ass out of there. He just jumps in the field and he feels safe again.
Okay.
So
So what he when he went out, he just hung back out in the field and just stuck
yeah,
into
he
the cover.
worked his way back kind of southwest to me. So
Hmm.
he just didn't seem like he didn't like what he was seeing.
Right.
So
So that I know that wasn't your last day there. So did you focus back in around that area where you saw that buck, or did you
yeah,
move back around?
I kind of went to the southwest. I was trying to play the wind a little more, like trying to guess and keep my back. You know, it's hard to know where the deer are moving through. I knew there was trails I had marked in the spring,
Especially
and
on a new piece you've never hunted before. It's like you
yeah,
don't know necessarily where they're bedding or where they're going to.
and it seemed to work out. Every time I thought where they might move, they actually did move through there, which is a rare occasion for me. But it's hard because you said you've got a lot of different forces at work down, and when you're hunting a piece of public, because you got all the scent from people walking through there. You know, you've also got the bird hunters that are out there, the small game hunters that are out there during the day that are pushing them around. And then obviously the guys that are walking in late, getting to their stand or getting down early because they're afraid of the dark. So
Hmm.
there's some things like you can't really account for. But yeah, for the most part, I was able to get myself and put myself on deer. Now they weren't always bucks, but I always saw, a decent amount of deer and at least it kept my attention. It was hot as Jesus. I think it was
Right.
80 degrees out there at that time.
Yeah, you guys
So
were fighting the weather bad. I remember
yeah, it was
I
hot.
remember talking with you while you were down there and you're like, dude, I'm wearing a t-shirt and I should be wearing shorts right now. It's so hot
Oh,
out.
it's so terrible. And ticks were out in full force. But yeah, I think that was the first time I was deploying those latitude sticks that I had, and gosh, those were so nice. I
Hmm.
think that was the first experience I had with them, and well, first chance I had with them. And man, they were as advertised.
Right.
So
Makes it nice for running around, running and gunning.
mhm.
Did with it being hot like that, did you hunt around any water at all?
I tried to. Yeah, there's always I know like Coach Maddox especially did. He had a pond that he was kind of posting up around, and he never really seen anything come in. And
Hmm.
I never really saw anything with the pond that was by me. There was actually just some several little streams running through there, rivers, as they were calling them. So yeah, we did focus on and staying some low ground and hit some of those water spots, but sea
Water's
deer.
been
But
water's been intriguing me of the past couple years. It seems like when it's hot like that, it just makes sense to sit somewhere near water. It's like
yeah,
they're gonna come in to get a drink, especially if there's only one or two good water sources in an area. It makes sense
yeah,
to
there was
hunt by them when it's hot.
quite a bit of water. Like like I said, that river running through the entire property. So and then you had just little pockets, some ponds here and there,
Hmm.
marshes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
what the rest of the trip, you guys, I mean, you just saw does for the most part. It's
yeah.
hot. Nothing too eventful happened.
Those guys, I know Coach Maddox was looking at maybe just tagging a deer. I know he was itching. He's a meat hunter, so he
Yeah.
talked about possibly shooting a doe. Never did pull the trigger just because how hot it was and what we were going to do with it. You know, you'd have to sit there and probably keep ice on it nonstop. We had the
Well, no,
ability to do it. It's just he chose not to.
well, and it always makes it. This is the dilemma I always run into. It's like you get down to the last day, and it's like, do I really want to shoot a doe and have to take care of it on the last day?
He was
And
in
I
that dilemma.
and you know me, I love shooting does. So it's like that's what always racks my head. And I'm like, a lot of the times I don't do it, especially if I'm like hunting a public piece or whatever. I'm just like,
Well,
it's not worth it right now. Whereas at least like when we're in Missouri, I got a couple guys there to help me get it cleaned up, if
yeah,
anything, or even back in Michigan, you get them cleaned up pretty easy.
I was pleasantly surprised when he didn't shoot a doe on that last day because it was hot. I think that was one of the hotter days. You really don't have a means to get it out. And as far as we were hunting back in the on the piece, it would have been an all day affair. We wouldn't have got back till late. And I know he wasn't real hip on that either. So I think that weighed on his mind too. So he passed on it. I think he did see something that final day. We both did, and we just got the heck out of there.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it was a good hunt. It was fun. I'll be back there this year. But hopefully, I'm going to be able to scout here in the next coming weeks, and then also we can always get down there. I'd love to go down there that first weekend. There's placing tree stands out
Right.
just to see the carnage and the chaos. The guy said it's nuts.
I I think it's good. I think it's good. I mean, I don't know if I'd go that weekend that everyone's doing it, but the weekend after would be a good idea just because you can see where everyone's setups are and then hopefully pick a few areas that are not going to get hit as hard.
Yeah, I think we were down there. I don't know if it was the weekend after or if it was the second week. It was youth season. I didn't realize it. We're wandering around the woods, and even Maddox must have asked me. He said, "Hey, why are these blinds on?" I went, "Holy cow! Let me look at something here." And I pulled up. We quick ran over to the local Dollar General and grabbed some orange to put on.
Yep.
So another little. I thought I didn't even
I,
give that a thought.
that's that's like something everywhere you go, you got to check to see when their youth season is. We've run into that several times. It's like you show up to hunt and you're like, "Oh shit, it's youth season. I gotta go pick up a beanie or a vest or
Something.
whatever."
I've done it in Missouri a couple times, but
Yep.
hunting public especially is I definitely want to have it on. And we did. We ran into there wasn't too many youth hunters out there that weekend. Actually, I don't think we saw maybe one, two. So it was pretty crazy. I thought, man, that'd be nice for Coach Maddox to bring his kids down if they wanted to hunt a youth season down there.
Right.
So
So after Indiana, um, so that was the first weekend of October. You ended up just sticking around home in Michigan, hunting your dad's place.
yeah, we had the work trip in between there. Obviously, that chewed up 4 or 5 days, but
Hmm.
that went really well. Nice to Coach Stein and BDB to come down there with us and get some things trimmed up. And I thought it went really well, other than Coach Stein catching poison ivy again.
Yeah,
But
that's down in Missouri. Down in Missouri, you're
yeah,
talking.
down in Missouri. Yeah. The rest of the Michigan hunt was fun. I passed on that 8 point. I don't know if I have that even on video yet. I put it up there.
I think you did. You sent me at least a clip of it, but that
Yeah.
was, I mean, it's good young buck. I mean, your dad's place every year. You guys always have three or four bucks that are, I mean, they're good
Great.
young bucks, 2 year olds, and
Great. If they were to make it another
right.
year, never do.
But it's great. I mean, I'll just say your dad's place is just like my grandpa's where I hunt. It's like you always have a couple good bucks that are like 2 years old. They're just nice 100
Yep.
inch, 110-inch bucks. Nothing ever makes it through, it seems like. I mean, no matter what you do, we occasionally we'll get a 3-year-old that looks pretty good, but dude,
We had
there's so many people hunting around every property by us. It's like it's a
gauntlet,
massacre come the rifle season.
like running the gauntlet.
Yep.
We had the one buck here like this last what we haven't seen him. He's probably I know he's dead. We were calling him
Big
Kaiser
that
Sose.
Yeah, that big 10 point.
Yeah, that nobody ever seen. It was kind of like a legend. You used to get him on his
He
trail
was
camera.
he was a hell of a buck though. I mean,
It
that's
was 10, then a 12, then a back to a 10. So we seen him for 3 years.
yeah,
Or no, he was an 8. He was an 8, then a 10, then a 12, and then we've never seen him again. That's what it was.
right.
Or was he? I can't remember how it went out.
And
No, he was a
in like
10. He was a
but
10.
he had some kickers. He had some
He did.
kickers.
And then he had the splits. The
Hmm.
second year we seen him. The third year I seen him, he looked like he kind of regressed a little bit, but he was still a 10, but he didn't have any kickers. And
Right.
so yeah, so it was
So
he was well,
were you trying to hunt him last year? I know he showed up on camera early, but I don't think he didn't stick around, right? Past like middle of October.
no, I think somebody got him youth season or even early archery. We had him on camera in September. That was
Oh,
it.
that's when it was. Okay.
Yeah. It
So
was
with
real
hunting
early.
around your with with having him at least on camera in September, were you hunting specifically for him around your dad's, or did you have other bucks that you would consider shooting?
There was actually there were some nice bucks that my dad had camera on a mineral lick that he had early August, early September, late August, early September. So we were trying to, find one of those bucks. There was two in particular that we had that were one was real wide, not very tall, and then there was another one that was he was nice. He was
Hmm.
probably 120 inches
Yeah.
or better. So would have been probably my biggest Michigan buck. But it was
You've got a couple good Michigan bucks, probably bigger than that, right?
I have the one that I shot long time ago, and then my first 10 point that I got out of my dad's there. That was when we had a little more acreage to play with, but
Yeah.
and then same with that other one. Yeah, that other one's probably in the 120s. I think it's mid 120s.
Hmm.
So that's been
But
my best.
your dad's, I mean, it's got a pretty good history of having at least decent deer on it. But
Yeah,
you're also like you're like us or whoever else. You got a lot of guys that hunt ground because it's hard to get ground to hunt in Michigan, or at least our area of Michigan. It's hard to find new farms to hunt. So you end up
yeah,
stacking,
a lot of
four or five guys on a property. The pressure, it just kills the pieces. It seems like even come the rut, it's like you got to get on them early.
everything gets chunked up pretty small peak parcels, and you got a lot of guys that try to pile on them, and it ends up being yeah, you end up with a lot of guys, especially rifle season.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had nice bucks out there. So when I saw that 8 point, yeah, I could see he was young. Obviously, my dad probably would have shot him. He's made that no bones about that. I know Michael probably would have flung an arrow at him. I actually did grab my bow, and he was 20 yards broadside, as you can see in that video. But I ended up not shooting him. Passed on that. The rest of the season, saw small box does, had a few shutouts here and there. My typical experience probably within Michigan. It's not always you're going to see deer every single night. And I just saw 4.6. I had one good hunt after they brought the corn down. I was hunting the field edge there, and I saw a ton of deer, but it was mainly after dark. I did have one experience there where a guy came and hunted like 15 yards from me, that 90-year-old man with his recurve bow trespassing on our property. I was trying to catch him, and he ended up scooting out of there before it got dark or anything like that. He got out there really early. Came in late, got out early, so I never had a chance to connect with him. But yeah, other than that, I mean, Michigan was pretty uneventful. Michael didn't really see. He didn't hunt a lot as much as I thought he was going to, but he didn't have great success there. He's seen some deer. I did hunt out of a stand once, and I thought there was another nice buck that came in that I just didn't get on camera, and I did a little bit, but it caught my wind. The wind was swirling really bad back there, and it ended up bolting out of there. But that was a nice buck there too. I think he saw a decent amount, like here and there, but he had a lot of hunts. He didn't see any deer,
Right.
especially late in the year.
Well, it's got to at least be a little bit encouraging there at your dad's where you guys are doing a lot of food plots during the summer. and
Mhm.
you're starting to see more deer and bucks, at least early in the season
Yeah, we had
before the pressure really picks up.
my stepbrother there. He hit a nice 8 point out of the our one of our food plots there, and never found it. He had taken a shot into some corn and didn't put a good shot, so they never ended up finding it. And but yeah, that food plot we did plenty of food plots. We actually put some cereal rye
Mhm.
in late fall, and we're hoping that comes up and brings them in once the snow starts going away.
And you're coming off of a select log, right? Your dad took some trees off of his property again.
He always talks of,
Oh,
it,
I thought he did this past year.
he did not. No, I've been trying to convince him to take some of the huge beech trees are on our property, and I think he has somebody that has said they'd come in and do it, but they, for whatever reason, they're not. He's getting a little frustrated with them. So there is something like if he takes those away, those are just like a huge canopy up above and
Right.
snuffing a lot of the undergrowth out. So I told him he really needs to get those out of there. And if we move those out, I mean, you could almost, we could do a lot of, putting some native plants in there and shrubs and trees. And, I'd love to get some apples and
Well,
apple trees.
it would be immensely helpful for the understory of the
Yeah,
property as well. I mean, you
just
take those big beech
forbs.
trees out, it opens up so much sunlight there, and you'll get stuff shooting up everywhere out of the ground.
Yeah, when he did a select log 3, 4 years ago, and you can see the benefits of it. And, you get a lot of the native plants that come up, and the deer have a lot of browse there then. And just cover in general. We get the briars and stuff that grow up too and help them out.
Right.
So yeah, I know the food plots have been great. I mean, it's been a really good. He's excited about it. We've got a nice little disc that we've been using.
How many years now have you been doing food plots at your dad's?
In seriousness, probably just the last 3, 4.
Okay.
And we've been trying different seed products, and I kind of landed on Northwood Whitetail seed that I've been using the past 2 years, and I've had really, really good success with it. They're
Yeah.
really based out of Michigan here, up in Escanaba. So it's been great using them. Very informative. Anytime I email John, he's got tips and just how to plant things and what his experiences with it on how to make it a better food plot and it to be successful.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we used that down in Missouri, just on our poor man's plots, and they came up as good as they could for,
Yeah,
we're using a little rake and a small hand tiller just to rough up some of the logging roads, but they came up really good.
they did. And then unfortunately, just like everywhere else, had a bad drought, and then we saw them just kind of
So
dry.
were your food plots just hammered by the drought? I mean, just everything dried up at your dad's?
We didn't have the drought like everywhere else. We had a lot of
Oh,
good
really?
rain. Yeah, we had good rain here, so they really came up nice. And I mean, the one I think I've got one of our stands. Like it's going to be. I want to expand it because they hit it so hard. They were eating the chicory right down to the nubs. I
Is
mean,
that
it
the
was
one
just
go? Is that the one going out to the cornfield?
it is, yeah.
Yeah, that's a sweet little spot. I mean, everything just kind of pinches down there. Obviously, I haven't been to your dad's, but we
Nice little
talk all
corner.
we talk all the time, just sending pictures back and forth of like the aerial and like mapping things out. And it's like you look at it and it's like that's just a natural spot to put a good food plot in, leading out to the big ag field.
And that's actually where my stepbrother shot that buck.
Hmm.
So we had some good pictures out there. They were hammering that thing, and especially as it got into October, they were just. I made a determination that we got to almost double the size
Yeah.
of that thing. So
Do you have the room there to double that plot?
yeah, my dad likes putting corn, so he wanted to put several rows of corn. I want to get rid of the corn, at least in that area. He can put it back in one of the other fields.
Now, have you thought about doing any sort of like a screen around the edge of it so they feel a
Yeah,
little bit more comfortable coming out into the middle of that plot?
that's what I want to do this year. And I'm going to try to find. I know Northwoods has a screen there that we could use, or I could use some Ascanthus.
Yeah. Well, I think anything you can use to help just break up a little bit of between the timber and where the food plot is probably just gives a little bit of buffer for the deer to feel safe. I've never done that, but you hear guys talk about it all the time, and it seems like it should work. I mean, it sounds good in theory.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be an attempt that we make this year and see what we can do with it. I do think that just actually enhance that stand this year. We
Right.
got a nice little. I put a nice little plot in out by Michael's stand there. That's actually a really good one. That went really well, and I'll probably end up resurrecting that one again if it doesn't come back. But it used that. I can't remember. Fall Forage from Northwoods. So it's a little mixture. So I'll be able to till that under, and we'll start from scratch.
Right. Yeah, I like it. It's a good plan. So, all right. So Michigan, you hunted most of October there.
Yep.
You didn't hunt any late season or anything in Michigan, or did you get out a couple times?
I did not know. I got
Okay.
back after Missouri. It's always like I
Well,
feel like,
that's like a 1 month stretch for you basically where you're
yeah,
driving back and forth between Michigan and Missouri.
I did hunt a little bit when I got back from Missouri. I got out like one more time just before rifle, and I didn't see anything. I mean, the woods were pretty much pounded.
Right.
So I hunted Michael Stand one final time, and I didn't see anything.
Okay.
So it was not a lackluster season, but I was hoping for a little bit better. I thought we'd have some nice bucks out there, especially the food plots. Maybe it was early season because that's actually when my stepbrother shot that buck. Maybe during
Right.
that when I think I was in the work trip when he shot it. So
Yeah, I think so. I
mhm.
remember talking with you about it. But I mean, it's crazy just because I'm on your cell cameras as well, and you're on all of mine that I run in different states, and it's kind of interesting. You watch the cameras at your dad's, and it's like you're just deer after deer like early in the season, and then slowly as like you get towards like the end of October, it almost like completely tapers off. Like
Yeah,
as more guys are getting out hunting, you can just see how the pressure really affects them, and they're not coming out to food like they were before.
nope. And it is the pressure is the great equalizer.
Right. Yeah. So, all right. So Michigan was wrapped up. I mean, pretty decent for the most part. You saw a deer almost every time. Saw a couple good bucks. Missouri.
So
This
now
is our year. This is our
you're
yearly.
able to jump in now finally.
Yeah. Well, Missouri's our yearly thing. I think let's just say I've been hunting in Missouri with you for 7 years, 8 years.
I think it's going on.
I think this year will be
This is
eight.
the eighth. This is the
Yeah.
eighth year coming up.
And you've been hunting in Missouri for 20 plus years now.
Yeah, it's been a while. I've been down in Missouri. Well, maybe not quite 20, but we're pushing 20. I was early 30s when I started.
Yep.
And I mean, I found it with Baker for that long.
Right.
Well, that's pretty crazy to think. Off
Yeah.
and on. There was a stretch where he and I didn't hunt together, but yeah, it's been where I'm going to be like 18, 17, 18 years here hunting down
Yeah.
there, whether it be public or private.
Yeah. But I mean, Missouri's like it's our go-to every year. I mean, we're constantly planning for Missouri. Everything else just kind of seems to filter in around it. And it's almost sad to say that you got all of our local hunts and everything where it's like you can get out every weekend, but we look forward to Missouri every year. Just the deer hunting's great. The camp's just as fun, if not more fun.
It might be the best part of it.
Yeah, the group of guys that we have going down to Missouri is pretty incredible. So we always have fun with that. But we generally try for 10 days every year in Missouri. And
Seven to 10.
usually we used to do like the first week of
Yep.
November. We were like November 1st through the 8th, 9th, 10th,
Nice.
somewhere in there is generally what we've always done. And then I think for 4 years or 3 years, we pushed it back a week. Just we always seemed like it was a little too early. And then we pushed it back a week, and then we seemed like, oh, we missed it or whatever. It's just every year was a little bit different, weather depending or whatever. But this year, just how the calendars lined up for everyone, we ended up going the 1st through the 10th
Yeah,
this
something like
year.
that.
So we,
Went a little earlier.
yeah, we went a
Back.
little bit earlier this year, and it was good. I mean,
Yeah.
this is we'll run through it, but this was one of the best years I've had in Missouri in a long time. I was kind of riding the struggle bus for the past 2 years. I think I've had pretty bad seasons the past 2 years, but
Yeah, it's been
yeah,
a little
this
bit of a
well the wet. I mean, we say this every year. It seems like the weather's just been garbage when we're there. I mean, hot, and this year was not awful.
rain.
It wasn't great. It was pretty just average temps,
The
but
big
like
well, yeah, temps were fine, but I mean the beginning of it was just like Noah's
rain,
Ark.
rain
Yep.
every single day.
I mean it was yeah. So it was the temps have been no matter when we went, it's been hot and then
Yeah,
finally turns cold or just cold, then turns hot. So
yeah.
things seem like they shut down.
I think because we recapped this and we were looking back, it's been since 2020 when we had cool temps. Because
Yeah,
23 was hot. I mean, unbearably hot when we
crazy.
were down there. But this year was pretty average temp, so we were excited. I mean, we were like it's in the 40s, 40s,
Hmm.
maybe low 50s, still kind of hot, but it was better. It's better than what we've been used to for the past few years. So I think we had pretty high expectations going into Missouri. And I think we had high expectations because we had two booners on camera.
Yeah.
Between the properties that we hunted, we had two booners, and then we had a couple other bucks that were, good bucks, like mid 40s, low 50s. I'm thinking, Browser specifically was another one we were excited about.
Yeah.
Um,
HCB was still out there
yep,
that we knew of. We didn't really have much on camera. We had like one or two pictures of him, but he's a returning buck.
right. But I mean, we had a few decent bucks that we were after, and I think just we've hunted our pieces now for so long that we at least have an idea of deer are going to show up, and we have a couple good sized pieces of ground that we hunt too. So it's like we know where the pinch points are, we know where the rut funnels are. Just
We're
park your ass in a stand and just watch the show.
always seem like we're moving stands somehow though.
Well, we find
We're
we
getting
fine tune
less and
pieces as they
less,
go. Yeah.
less and less though. So that's, I mean, I think we've gotten things kind of ironed out where we don't really have to do a whole lot of that. I mean, we did a lot this year.
hmm
I mean,
Well,
I think I moved our
we revamped the one property
yeah,
last year. We completely turned everything around because they logged the piece.
yeah,
They logged it, so when we walked it during shed season, when we were walking around, we're like, we got to move this stand 100 yards this way. We got to move this stand 50 yards that way. And we just kind of moved around to where just natural movement would be. Now that there's just tops everywhere in that piece. I mean, they did a terrible job cleaning it up, but
yeah.
um,
Definitely was a
we
mess.
we moved stands around, and I think we had them dialed in. I think we had it dialed in after sitting it for a year, but we no longer have that piece. We may or may not get into that here, but
Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah, I think let's hit on this. So I headed up to Missouri after trick or treating with the kids on Halloween. I got done doing trick or treating. Um, I don't know, whenever it got dark, I drove halfway up in Illinois and then got on the road the next morning at 5, I think. So I had enough time to drive the second half of the trip and get into the stand. Um, and I think that was probably the most excited I was, or most anticipation I had going into a sit, because we had Junkyard on the camera the day before at noon or 1.
Yeah. It was like
And
one
this
o'clock.
is Yeah, and I mean, I'll throw a video overlay of the deer. I don't mind putting it
Yeah.
on there because he's dead now. But I think, I mean, you and I, because we were talking while I was driving, and I was like, I think I'm gonna go to this other property and hunt and see if I can get on the deer you killed or Browser. But with Junkyard showing up on camera, we
Daylight.
talked. It's like how do you not go to that spot? There's one area that up to that point he had been there every, what, 3 days, 4 days.
Hmm.
Sometimes he'd
Yeah.
show up a couple days in a row, and it wasn't, it was consistent. Not always daytime pictures, a lot of nighttime stuff. But with how that piece
Maybe
sets
just
up,
after dark.
yeah. But with how that piece sets up, it's all ag. I mean, it's a good sized piece, but it's a lot of ag, couple fingers. Um, so you got to give it a shot when he shows up in daylight like that. You get in there. The wind was good, so I made I made the call to go sit in there.
What kind of hunt did you? I
That
don't even remember what kind of hunt you had that night. That's usually
yeah
one of our better stands now. But
yeah I had a good sit. I think I got into the stand at 12:30. Yeah, about 12:30 I got into the stand, and first time in a tree all year. So I'm like, all right, we got
oh,
100
rusty.
185-inch deer that just showed up the day before. I'm getting into the stand for the first time, and I got in clean, as clean as you can for that spot. I got in. I got everything all set up. And, everything went pretty smooth, but I had like the jitters in the stand. I wasn't very still. I'm kind of like looking around. I'm like just trying to get my bearings about being back in a tree since I hadn't been in a tree for a year. And it was okay. I mean, that was all fine. It took me a little bit to calm down, but I'm like, all right, just settle in, take a breath, enjoy the evening. And it was good. It was a good first night. I sat up there on the ridge to the east, coming down into the field. I had three does come out maybe hour and a half before dark, and they didn't come in like hot, but they came in, at a good clip coming in. And behind them there was a 9 point that came in behind them, and he's good, nice looking buck, but he's young. I mean, you look at his body and it's like it almost looked like, it's his second. He's a 2 year old. He's just a 2 year old 9 point. Looked
Mhm.
really good, but they hung around. They fed. He wasn't really bumping or anything. He wasn't pushing him around too bad, but they worked down right to the finger by me, and then like a 5 point, he's all busted up. He came up off the ridge as well. He came down. Him and that 9 point, they sparred in front of me. They hung around for most of the evening. Those I think I ended up seeing like four more does or something that came out, and then kind of right at last light, back up towards the center of the property, there was a 8 point out there bumping a doe out in the middle of the field. Nothing big, nothing big, but you could just see him silhouetted up there as the sun was going down. And I think that was the first day. Saw a couple bucks, couple does. It was good. It was cool. It wasn't
No
hot or anything.
junkyard. No
No,
junkyard.
no junkyard. I don't think we had a picture of him that night, but that was it was good. It was good to see deer moving. It was good to see bucks on does, or at least with the does. Um, so yeah, that was the first night, and then you guys rolled into camp.
Late.
You guys late that night, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, like
It's like
2,
morning.
3 in the morning.
Yeah. Got their didn't get out
Yeah,
of Coach Stein he had his business meetings that he was taking care of. So we got a late jump on it. But
yeah. So we had everyone in camp. I guess that would have been
bake.
Saturday night, right? Well, Baker didn't
Yeah.
come. Baker had to work.
Oh, that's right. Bake didn't we didn't have everybody, but we had everybody that was
Yeah,
supposed to. Yeah. Bake came out
right.
with us late season.
Yeah, so I think let's run through the day one. I'm gonna have a hard time remembering all this, and we can kind of generalize some of this, but
Day
the first,
one, so like I know this. The first 3 days, basically, we were dodging
yeah,
rainstorms. I think
the the first morning was
day
one of
one
our
we were
best.
able to get up
The first
mornings.
morning was one of our best mornings weather-wise.
Yes,
It was cool
I was able to
because
get up.
there was a big front moving in,
Mhm.
and I think I went back to that same property the junkyard was in. You went to, I think, yeah, you went
I hunted the
to the
vine.
property. Yeah, you hunted the vine stand, and it was a good morning. I think I sat in the middle finger stand and I had action immediately. Like I wasn't even set up. I wasn't even set up, and I had um bucks, a a
You got
buck.
there late.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was the morning I got there late. Yep.
Yeah.
But I wasn't even set up, and I had a buck on three does. Yeah, I had a buck on three does, and they hung around in front of me for a while. And then I saw like another 8 point doe that first morning. So I mean, it was okay. It wasn't great by any means, but it was good to see deer moving. And I think, was that the start of youth season as well?
I believe it was. Yeah.
Okay. So heard a few gunshots that morning, just figuring, well, junkyard's dead with every shot. But uh I mean, it was a pretty decent morning. We saw a couple deer, and then I don't know what
You
you saw. I don't know what you saw that first morning, right?
I saw a couple does, and then I saw a nice buck, coming across, just kind of tearing ass across the hayfield,
Right.
and dove down. And it was several. It was probably 80 to 100 yards away, so it wasn't
Hmm.
like I was had any kind of. But it was only a flash. I never even got it on camera. And I remember we were trying to toy with it because we still had some things to do, and I knew there was rain coming
We had to get
because
blinds out.
we were trying to get blinds out. That's what it was, and I kind of was pushing because I kept looking at the rain and they kept getting closer and closer. They kept pushing back the time closer to it, like the noon hour. So I remember I was kind of getting antsy, getting down. You know me,
Yep.
working on mine. So
Well, and that with the weather, I mean, we were watching the weather going into this. Like I think
nonstop.
every person who hunts does this. They just watch the weather for 10 days leading up to their trip. But we made the call.
You
I
ended
don't
up.
know.
I
We
don't.
made the
We
call.
didn't hunt.
We made the call like four days before to buy a bunch of blinds, and
Mm-hmm.
we bought a
Or
bunch of
bring
pop
blinds
up
down that you
blinds.
had.
Yeah, to get them set up
Yeah.
for the 3 day stretch that we had of rain because we didn't want to miss out on six
Any
sits,
hunt.
depending on how much or how bad the rain was.
Yeah.
Um, but so yeah,
I mean, they
after
were
that,
talking like it was going to hang around for like 3 days straight, like it was going to rain nonstop.
well, all I know is when I was driving up here, I stopped at the Casey's there in the middle of Missouri, and guy from Arkansas was at the pump talking on the phone, just complaining about the weather, and he goes, I come up here for a week and it's gonna rain half the week or whatever, and you look at every pump at the Casey's is filled up with guys that got four wheelers on their back, tree stands. It's like everyone's making the migration north to go hunt.
Yeah, and I think that night was when you hunted.
I
We
did.
ended
I sat,
we ended up doing the work, some of the work
yeah,
there, and
I sat at the crab stand that night and thought I thought that I would see deer, and I did. I think I saw a doe, but it was way across the field. But I thought if this rain's coming in, it's not pouring yet. Like it was gonna like right after dark, it was gonna start to just
yeah,
dump rain. It was light. I'm like, maybe I'll catch these deer coming out to feed early before the rain really moves in. And that spot's not really tucked up to a bunch of cover, but we've had good history in that spot. So
mhm.
I thought that was the right play. Turned out it was a crappy sit. I mean, it rained harder than what I thought it was going to. And I think you guys just sat up on the hill and watched me.
Oh,
Uh,
we drove by it. We went back
yeah.
to the cabin. We didn't even hunt. I bagged that one. I mean, we knew there was gonna be some hunts that we were gonna miss out on, and just bag them. And I know, like, I think the next morning we actually,
We didn't sleep in, but we just sat at the cabin because it was
yeah,
raining.
'cause it was just
We had
pouring.
coffee and we talked about where we were going to go because it was dumping rain that next morning. I don't think anyone hunted. I don't think
No,
anyone went
nobody
out.
did. No, nobody did.
But I will say we went out um we went out at 11, I think, because the rain was starting to let up, and you and I have talked about this for several years now, and we have noticed this as the rain cuts off, if you are in the woods, it's like someone just flips a switch. And
Yeah, like that.
once that rain's done, the deer start moving. And
It's
we
like somebody lets
found,
them out of the house.
yeah, and it's like we've just found over the past couple of years, if it's raining and it's going to stop midday, get your ass in a stand and just be
Yeah,
there for the rest of the day. Once that rain's done, deer are going to start to move. And that's exactly what I saw. I went and hunted the property where you killed your deer.
yep.
Right as I got in the stand, the rain was cutting off, and I saw three does move through right away,
What stand did
and
you hunt that day? I don't
tim
remember.
timber.
Timber. Okay.
Yep. So
And that's been a
um,
dynamite stand for
that
you,
that
especially during these types of settings and rain
well,
cutting.
this yeah, but that spot's just perfect for you. You're tucked back in the woods on the cover. You're on a bench, and it's just a natural spot for deer to flow through. And yeah, it's been a good spot for me, but I've also missed like $3 out of that stand. So
Opportunities.
yeah, what do we call it? The Norwood? We don't call it timber
Norwood.
anymore. We call
Yes.
it Norwood.
I like
Um, but I again, rain cuts off. I have high hopes that you're just going to see deer, and I did. I mean, I saw three does right away. I had a small buck after those does, and I think I called. I rattled shortly after those deer had gone through, and I put my antlers down. I turned. I looked to my left. I turned back. I looked to my right, and there's he's either an 8 or 10, big, tall, wide 8 or 10 point, sitting there just staring at me. He busted me so fast. He caught me moving, but it was like, I mean, I rattled and he was there, and I turned around. I'm like, okay, he's got me. So I'm like, he's back behind me. So I'm like tucking myself behind the tree, trying to see like, all right, is he gonna come in? Does he actually have me? Or is he gonna come in? He kind of like, he's doing the head bob, right? He's
That
doing the
Bob to
head
catch the
bob,
move.
looking to see what's going on. And I just sat still and he ended up just circling and turning back up into that thick part where they didn't log.
Yep.
And I'm like, all right, here's my chance. If I'm gonna turn him, I gotta call now. I grunted and he stopped and he looked and he just kind of flicked his tail like, okay, everything's good. But he kept walking. I'm like, I'm taking my shot. I grabbed the horns and I cracked them together again. But not like I didn't whale them together, but I hit him just good enough. And I'm like, all right, he's gonna come back in. He kept walking. I'm sitting there watching him and I'm like, all right, well, he's gone. So I set the antlers down and I look up on the hill in front of me. There's an 8 point coming down off the hill. And he worked that logging road all the way around and came right through in front of me on that trail is what, 10 yards.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's not very far.
he was he was a good buck. I mean, he was about the size of the one that I ended up shooting, but we were early in that trip still. And I'm like, yeah, nah, he's not doing it for me. So I let
Not
him
too.
walk by and he read the script. I mean, he did everything that I wanted him to do, but just not what I was looking for at the time. So he came through and after that, I think I just had does and a couple small bucks come through, but it was pretty much nonstop from the second we got into the stand till dark. There was deer coming through for me, and it was a pretty good sit. And it still holds true for me that if there's a weather front coming through, when that rain cuts off, you got to be in the stand.
I I would always agree with you on this. My hunt wasn't quite as good that, but I did see quite a few deer towards the end of the evening. I hunted LGB at that night or that day. So
Well, I think the highlight from your hunt was you got out of the stand, and by the time you got back to your truck, there was a picture of Junkyard right in front of that stand.
yeah, I know. Yeah,
It
it was
was
very
you.
shortly after that.
You were
Yeah,
out of the stand for 20 minutes, and Junkyard showed up right in front of it,
right
and
on
he
that scrape.
was, yeah. I mean the camera's right in front of the stand. He
Yeah,
was who, he had to have come off the piece to the north. Now who knows if he was bedded up there or he was just on the other side of the finger feeding, and he just happened to work his way down. But I
hmm
mean, your guys' paths just
we
barely missed
he
each
would
other.
cross my path. That was for sure. I mean, it was I was on my way. I mean, I stayed late too. I was up there. I got stuck up there in the tree with bucks fighting and bucks out, and they were feeding in the
Well,
beans. So
was that the same night you saw the 10 point?
yeah, and I saw him fairly early. I actually had just done a rattle sequence and saw him come across and passed on him. He got me a little excited as he was walking in because I couldn't really quite make out his rack, but he's a good. He'll be a great buck for us this year. I mean, we
Yeah.
know he made it. We had him on camera a couple different times, so um,
He put on a show for you too. I mean,
he
he
was there for a while.
he did everything you wanted him to do.
Yeah, I could have made a whole video off him.
Yep,
That was a good hunt for me. It was fun. There's a ton of I saw quite a few deer, so it was great. And then I think it rains the rest of the night. I think it
it
started
did.
raining again, and I don't think. Well, then it stopped because this would be my third hunt, and this would be the morning. I went to Tree Hugger because I only hunted 3 times, 3 days,
Right.
and this would have been that morning that I shot him, and the buck that I end up sticking, and that was a good morning for me, and that's always a really good stand for it. It has been historically for us, so
You want
I
to break
finally
that? You want to break that stand down, like what the location's like for it?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think we can all probably have our own stories and how we hunt it and what we think the deer are doing, but really just think it's a natural travel corridor through our property and some of the adjacent properties.
But
And
it's on a creek, right? Like the
well,
stand's
right
just
up
off a
creek.
creek.
Yep, we sit along our field edge. The property to the south of us, probably what
100
100
yards,
yards
120
away.
yards.
Yeah, so you can kind of see the lines to some degree. You can kind of, I mean, you don't really know exactly where it's at, but you kind of have an idea.
But the spot's just I mean,
Obviously,
it's a natural spot like funnel because you have our field here to the south of you, and then you have two ridges that dump down right in front of where that stand is,
funnel
and
right in, yeah,
the
a little
creek running
slope.
through the middle. I mean, it's a perfect. travel corridor for deer to go through. And it's just
Nice,
it,
it's thick, it's low spot, so they can kind of stay out of the watchful eye of predators or anybody like us. And they got access to the field if they want to go eat some hay. It's a nice little cubby hole there for them. And yeah, and then they can continue on, and there's a lot of undergrowth in there. So I mean, they've got a lot of food to choose from, and I know it's thick in there for them. So it's a great place for them to kind of meander back and forth, whether it be going onto our property, the southern property there, and then also over to the east and the north of us. So it's definitely something that they can travel right through there, and it's almost like a little pinch point because you really have the field on the southern property that also then opens up kind of the southeast of us.
yep.
So they almost have to naturally go right through there.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, it's just I think we looked at that spot and we just said this
well,
is the spot. And we've had that spot for a few years and we've had really good luck out of it.
yeah, I
You killed the
hunted there.
you killed the buck behind you out of that spot.
Yeah, I hunted there too with my climber. If you remember the first year or so that we had that property, we were trying to bounce around.
Yep.
You were kind of hunting your saddle. I was hunting my climber, and we are trying to find different spots. And that's where I had the big eight bust me.
Yep.
I was actually on the other side of where we were at, and he ended up. I was rattling, or I was watching deer up above me, and I ended up turning around, and he was standing 20 yards from me, staring at me. And a little history with that guy, but
Yeah.
somebody
He's
shot him, but he was a duke.
that, that shed right back there. Second
Yeah,
row down.
he was a monster. So yeah, that was the morning was great. Snuck in there, was hot, saw deer all morning, off and on, rattling, grunting. There's not a lot of running activity, but they're still hitting traits.
You saw a lot of bucks though that
I
morning.
did, yeah. Yeah, I saw several like small young bucks making scrapes, rubbing. They're just in browsing. They weren't really, like I said, not a ton of running. And then it was getting to the point where I think it was pushing 10 o'clock,
And
and
again we had rain coming in and we knew
we
that.
had rain coming in again. So knew that at some point we were going to get down. We still had to we wanted to get the rifle blinds out again. I know we brought blinds down to hunt out of, but I know we were looking at trying to get the rifle blinds out for us too. Um, Anywho, get in there. I do another rattling sequence and sat down, and probably I bet you it was 5 to 10 minutes. I didn't see anything. And all of a sudden I happened to look up, and I actually was texting the landowner at that point, just seeing how they were doing and what they're up to, and trying to check in with them. And right after that, I looked up and I saw this big Duke of a buck and knew who it was right away. I mean, we had him on camera for what, the last 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
He blew up this year. It's amazing how much
He
he
put
blew up.
he put on 30 inches
Yeah,
from last year.
probably 4.5 year old, 4.5.
4.5 year old.
I would say.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, he ended up. I passed on him the last 2 years, once during rifle and then the other time during the bow, is because he hadn't. Nice buck. He was cool. He had a lot
Well,
of character.
he had a very distinguishable flyer point. That it
Yes.
was like every year you could pick him off in his brow tines. He always had tall brow tines that were wide set.
Yep.
It's like you knew exactly who he was every year.
Yeah. So when I seen him, he had actually was just kind of he was walking away from me. So I ended up I grunted at him, pulled my primos. I hit.
Here, give this as your tip because this is something I found interesting that I don't do that I probably will do. What do you do for grunt tubes?
Oh, what do I do for grunt tubes?
Yeah, how you bring multiple grunt tubes, don't you?
I do. Yeah, I have multiple grunt tubes. I have three different kind. I actually have the Vector that's
Hmm.
actually made by a guy in Missouri, and it's a really deep grunt. I use that one if they're fair, if they're not too far away, and it's worked great for me. And I also have a Quaker, which it sounds more like a young buck. And then I have this Primo's buck growl snort wheeze that I bring with me as well. So I have three different buck tubes that I have with me just in case, depending on where I'm hunting at.
Yeah,
I wouldn't use the buck growl in Michigan.
oh well, I just found it interesting that you did that. I've always just carried one grunt tube with me and never thought anything about having multiple. And it makes sense because every one sounds a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're trying to paint the picture that there's multiple deer there, a couple different grunt tubes makes sense. And that was something that I picked up from you this year that I thought was a good idea to do. And I probably will put that into my toolbox for
I,
coming years.
Well, and I like that snort wheeze because it is louder. I can do it. Obviously, most people I can do it with just their mouth.
Yep.
I don't, and that's a hit or miss, by the way. That normally the mature bucks they're going to come in. I mean, like that 9 point that I ended up shooting, 3-4 years ago.
Yep.
I ended up snort wheezing him. I like a yo-yo back and forth. Like he just kept coming. He wanted to fight. He wanted to
Yep.
fight whoever was snort wheezing at him, and he just wouldn't give up. Well, that's what ended up getting this guy. I ended up grunting, doing the buck growl at him. It got him to turn. It didn't come all the way down to me. He then started heading away, and I buck growled at him again. I don't get all this on video, but he ends up. I snort wheeze, and this is his first time where I start videotaping because I thought he was coming in. Drops down into the creek bottom, gets down in there, and I can see his antlers or whatnot moving around, and he ends up doesn't like what he sees, doesn't hear anything, see anything. He's out. He goes up, gets up on the creek bank, opposite side, and then as he's behind this tree, I buck growl at him just one more time, and that got him. He was hooked, and he jumps around the creek, comes down through. He's up, kind of coming along that creek bottom, and yeah, I couldn't believe what was happening. To be honest with you, I see the thing coming in. I'm like, he's going to walk right down through a couple shooting lanes that we had just done, like this past October,
Hmm.
because that's where I seen a buck the year before and couldn't shoot, and I know Coach Stein said that's where the big buck that he seen, and we had no shooting lanes down into this area, so we had just trimmed it, and it was fairly quickly. I couldn't see; it looked like it was all good. And I ended up putting my camera on it, which you're disappointed with, as well as everybody else that I've talked to. Uh, Set it up. It ends up drifting, and he ends up going right into that shooting lane. And then I had drawn back when he was behind some like a brush pile, like a top.
Hmm.
And I drew back. I'm looking through my peep, and as he's coming through, I must have stopped him too late. That's what I'm
Did you
guessing.
did you stop? Did you stop him or did he stop naturally?
I stopped him.
Okay.
So I stop him, and I'm assuming I'm going to say I probably stopped him too late, but I wasn't able to see. The shooting lane wasn't real wide,
Hmm.
so anyways, I shoot. I saw my arrow do something where I thought it did, and then I started thinking like, well, maybe it was just me. Maybe I'm just panicking, but it didn't sound good. The hit,
You didn't hear
he
it
didn't
like a
act.
pop. Obviously, you didn't
Didn't
hear
hear
like
that
a
big
pop or
pop,
anything.
big crack, or anything like that. He ends up dropping across, as you can see in the video. Jumps over south on the south property. Eventually, he runs. He just walks over there, and so I went down into the shooting lane. I could then see after I went, I got down, checked, found blood, got right back up in the stand, did my post interview, got back down because I had to go see where. I didn't even look at the shooting lane because I had to see what was going on. Second time down, that's when I realized that there was a lot of stuff hanging down in front into that window a little bit, especially where he was standing. And that's where I think I stopped him late.
And
And I
when you
just
when you when
looked
you
right into
stop when you stopped him, was he quartering to you, quartering away, broadside? What did he do?
he was quartering to me, not hard, because there was one window I could have shot him, and he was quartering to me hard, and I didn't want to take that shot, not on a buck of that caliber.
Hmm.
Ended up actually putting a bad shot on him, anyways. But so he ends
Where
up.
where'd you put your pin on him when you shot? Did you put it right behind the shoulder, or did you think about tucking it in front of the shoulder and trying to go kind of down through the chest?
Oh, when he was quartering hard to me, I
No,
never.
even when you shot. No, when you shot him.
No, he wasn't quartering that hard, so I never
Okay.
really thought about going in the front there. I wanted to play it fairly safe. Figured I might get some guts, but I thought I had practiced all summer.
You'd at least get lung liver.
I didn't get any lung. It hit so far back. I got liver and
Hmm.
guts. So, he runs away, and then obviously we had a little bit of a conundrum there.
Yeah, because
Going,
you called me right afterwards, and I think I was just walking out when I actually called you back.
yeah,
Um, and you were telling me kind of running through it or whatever. And we had the rain coming in. That's why I was getting out of the stand because the
I
rain
was
was
pan-
coming in
I was
pretty
in panic.
hard. And you were panicking. I think I've always kind of joked that part of my job when we hunt together is to keep you calm because you get going a million miles a minute. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, dude, if you hit guts, it doesn't do you any good to get on him. You're just gonna bump him and he's gonna run. He's gonna run and you're gonna have a hard
Mm.
time catching back up with him. And I understood your point. You're like, we got rain coming in. I gotta at least try to get on him. Um, but you picked up blood quickly. right?
like right away, like within 10 yards of it. Yeah. And he had dumped quite a bit of blood, even across the creek. And yeah, it was big, but it was mainly, I knew it was going to be a bit of a struggle. I kind of had a feeling that it was going to be a little bit of a struggle with the landowner, but he actually had a really nice, really good suggestion. That's actually where we got turned on to the drone.
Because he ran onto the neighbor's property.
Yes, he went onto the neighbor's property and ended up bedding down in there. I kind of had an idea of the direction he was going. He suggested the drone recovery because it was a win for him, win for me because I don't want to get on it. I even told him, I said, I really don't want to even track this deer today, but with the impending rain that was coming, there was no way we were going to find him.
Mm-hmm.
So didn't realize Missouri had allowed drone deer, and found that out through him. And it was a great suggestion because it allowed him to hunt. It doesn't blow up his property, and then we ended up within 15 minutes of the drone deer recovery showing up, we ended up finding them.
Yeah, yeah.
And
The
it was
drone,
just pretty
the
interesting
drone,
to see that.
the drone process was really cool. I mean, for him to come out and then when he gets that thing in the air, we're watching on the screen, and I mean, he picked up that deer where it was at 15 minutes. I mean, it was less than 15 minutes because when he got back to the truck with the
He
drone,
landed it in
it,
15 minutes.
after
Yeah.
15 minutes, so it probably took him 9 minutes to find the deer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it does help like he said, it helps if you have all the information, where he went in a general direction that he can kind of scour that area out,
Mhm.
out where he was traveling to. So yeah, it was great. I mean, and then the next day I did get the deer and I don't think we want to
No,
get
it's
into
a long,
anything else other than that. Long
it's a
story,
long story, and
too long, and it's water in the bridge at this point.
yeah, it's not worth sharing at this point. But you
No.
got your deer back. I mean, you showed up to camp, and everyone was there. We were all sitting at the cabin, and all I can say is holy shit when we look
Yeah,
when we got to see the deer. I mean, pictures he looks big. Trail camera pictures he looks big.
video
In
it
per
looks big.
in person, I can't believe the frame on that deer. The tines aren't like super tall. Like he doesn't have like 12-inch tines or anything.
And actually, to
But
be
my
honest with you,
God,
that's why we passed on him in all those years because he had
yeah.
a cool rack, kicked the flyer off the back, but he never had tall tines,
Mm-mm.
and he still
But
really didn't even on this one, but he's wide.
but I mean, what 22 wide, I think is what it was.
Yeah,
Thir 13 scoreable points. He was an impressive deer.
yeah, it was. He's buck of a lifetime. He's the one that I was after all these years, and a little bit of a somber mood when you end up losing one of your properties because of it.
Yeah.
But it all good things come to an end at some point. This one just came a little sooner than what we expected.
Yeah, but I think one silver lining here, or I mean, just one takeaway, I guess. We've always said we'd like to shoot 4.5-year-old, 5.5-year-old deer, whether they're like 130-inch on their head or bigger. But generally, as they get older, the racks get bigger, and we pass deer. I mean, there's more years that we eat tags than not
Oh gosh, yeah,
waiting to shoot something big, and it just shows when you shoot a deer like that. It's like that's what we want to shoot. That's the standard. We want to shoot big mature deer, and that one was, and it was
I
it
can't
was
wait
pretty
to.
it was pretty incredible. Just overall as a camp, I mean, we're in general, it's like I don't care if I shoot a deer. I'm just as happy for the next guy in camp when they shoot a deer, and it's like you get a big camp camaraderie when someone shows back up with a
Oh yeah,
buck. I mean, it's
you're pumped,
awesome.
man. And I think you should be like that. Even junkyard going down. We know
Hmm.
the person that shot it, and I
Yeah.
can't tell you how happy I was for him. I mean, he was just tickled pink,
Yeah, there
and
there was not one moment of being upset that the neighbor shot the deer, and it's like
no,
we
oh,
know
awesome.
we knew that neighbor really well. This is a different
Well,
property than where
even
you killed yours, but we know the neighbor really well, and we share trail camera pictures back and forth. We're open about everything, and when he
even
when he when he shot that deer, it's
M6,
like we were so excited. Yeah,
even M6, we don't really know we've met one of the members of that family, and they're really nice people. And but I know they hunt. We've been told they hunt mature deer, and M6 was a five. What do we think? 5.5, 6.5.
6.5. Yeah.
Yeah, he was an old deer. He just always was an 8 point, and to see him get shot at, yeah, we had history with him. We'd like to shoot him too, but I offered when I found that out. I communicated with the neighbor that we're pretty good friends with. Is tell him congrats.
Yeah.
I'm happy for him. It was cool to see like that's again we don't really have a relationship with them, but I would love to because I congratulated myself. But that's what you should do as hunters. You shouldn't be jealous or upset or get angry at them for shooting
Your deer
your deer
or their deer,
that
or
you
whatever you want to
raised.
say.
That you raised. So
Yeah.
it was cool. I was happy. It was awesome to bring it back. A little bit of somber mood around it, which kind of sucked, but it's still we got stories to tell, and it's going to be hanging on my wall. And I finally got that one buck that I've been chasing. And let me just say this: I think you would agree this. The reason we did this YouTube channel was there's a couple different reasons. One, that we just like doing it, and sharing and keeping the memories. But then secondly is I think you said it in your video. It was when we were down in southern Indiana. Is everybody shows the great moments that they have for hunting and like the perfect setting, the perfect
Yep.
shot, the perfect spot. And I mean, I think we do this because we're not perfect. And I think you can relate to other hunters when you see some of the struggles that they end up with. And I've had plenty of struggles and plenty of screw ups to get to this point. And then finally to get that's what just makes it much more sweeter. So I
Yeah,
think that's
absolutely.
taking the realism of it.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the fun of doing all this is just showing all the ups and downs and then the mistakes we make and everything. And it's like it happens to all of us. None of us are perfect, and that's what makes the hunt fun. I mean, yeah, sure, it's really fun. Always like reliving like killing the deer, but I always get a laugh whenever we look back on just some of the dumb stuff that we did, or like our Indiana hunt from a couple years ago, how it was just terrible. We had a fun hunt. We didn't see
It was
hardly
fun.
any deer, but we had fun, and it's like you just look back and it's like it's more about the memories you make with the people who you hunt with than it is like just killing the deer itself. And granted,
Yeah.
we're all trying to kill a big deer. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
we hunt hard to kill a big deer, but we're we're more in it for the experience. And it's like once you
Camaraderie.
find yeah, once you find a good group of guys to hunt with, or even just a guy to hunt with, that's that's a lot of fun and that makes the hunt even more special.
Absolutely. Now, I just wanted to throw that in there because I think
Yeah,
it
no,
gets
that's good.
lost because that's a lot of these hunting channels. That's all they talk about is 200-inch deer, 180-inch deer. Yep, those are awesome. I'd love to do that, but I think what makes it special is that you just don't shoot it. They're not around every corner.
Right. Yeah, it's
Try to keep
it's definitely not. I mean, we've killed good deer as a group, but they're kind of far and few between. And we
they're
put a
not
lot of
easy.
work we put a lot of work in to find properties to hunt and get on them.
Mhm.
And even if you get them on camera, that doesn't mean you're going to kill them.
Yeah, so it's not easy, that's for sure. But yeah, so that ended up. There's my hunt in a nutshell. I hunted 3 times and tags out, and I haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah,
So, and then it was up to you guys. And so you continue your hunt.
yeah. I had a good. I mean, I think I said earlier, this is probably the best week of hunting that I've had in a long time. But over the next, because you killed on the third, right?
Yeah.
And I think I killed on the eighth. Um, the next few days were good. I mean, we bounced around, hunted. Mainly what we were doing, because our plan was Junkyard was still on our mind. He's still on camera. We were still getting pictures of him. And come to find out, after we checked trail cameras after the trip, he was on every single camera on that farm. We got like 8 cameras and he was just bouncing around, but he was never in one spot for more than like a moment at a time. Like he was just making loops around our property and the neighbors, I'm assuming as well.
Yeah.
Um, but so the next 5 days we were hunting the junkyard farm at night because it's all ag. And then we were hunting the flyer farm, which where you killed. We were hunting that in the mornings, a lot more cover, CRP. It just
And
aligned
still,
well for the
and
mornings.
still good bucks still running around on that property
Yeah,
too.
yeah. I
Big
mean,
property.
browser was definitely number one on my mind for that
Yep.
farm. But so that was our game plan. That was Stein and I. We were doing that. We were hunting together, bouncing back and forth between farms. And I think every sit I saw a deer that was 125, 130 within close-ish range, not always like a pass, but they were there. So I was seeing deer constantly, and it was good because it just kind of kept me going throughout the entire hunt. Um, Stein, same way. He was seeing good deer the entire time. But we were getting down to the end of the trip. The eighth was a Thursday, I think it was.
Yeah, because I didn't have company very long.
No, no, you didn't. I was only there for a day with you. Um, but yeah, so Thursday morning, it was cold. I think it was down in the 30s that morning. Stein and I got there. We walked in. Same farm that you killed. Went back to that farm that you killed on as our plan had just been, that entire week. And I hunted a new spot we called Moe's Tavern. It's just a stand right on a field edge, but back up to the west, there's a ravine. It drops back down to a top ravine and then drops and then comes back up to another higher ridge up there. And we had hung this set. Did we hang it? Shed Trip? I think we hung that one.
We did, yeah. It was one of the few stands that we hung during the cool weather.
Yeah. And we
Shed-
and the
You
re
hung it.
the reason we hung it there, we had it 150 yards maybe away before, but we
Yep.
liked how they logged the property. That middle ridge was wide open, so we planted a four man's food plot up there, and it came up well, but it was burned off really by the time season rolled around. But the spot set up nice because I had a big CRP field to my east, and then those ridges to my west, and I had a south wind that day, so it was just blowing it right back up the ravine. It was like it was picture perfect for it. I mean, it couldn't have been any better. I felt bulletproof up in the stand, and surprisingly it was a slow morning. I mean, I didn't see anything until 8 o'clock or whatever, so that's 2 hours in. But the one thing I made note of in the video was it was dead calm that morning. I mean, there was
I remember.
you could hear a mouse fart from 60 miles away,
Yeah.
and when the wind finally picked up, I mean, the wind it picked up a little bit, just breezy. That's when I saw deer. Like the second the wind picked up, I had a spike come from behind me, and he hung out just out in the field. And I got some cool footage of him like sniffing the air and like lip curling. Um, but then across the both ravines, there was two does that came out, and they just moved through. There was no buck on them, so I'm like, okay. I'm sitting there kind of thinking, it's getting good now. Deer are starting to move. I'm sitting on a block of timber, CRP behind me. Deer are gonna cruise through here. Um, I feel pretty good that I'm gonna see something, and not necessarily something that I shoot, but just that I'm gonna see deer moving through. And probably 30 minutes after those does came through, I caught actually back by where we had the old stand. Uh, a buck was over there working a scrape, and I put the binos up on him, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, it's a good buck. It's not like not huge, but I'm like, it's a good buck, and so I'm like, I'm gonna call to him and see what he does, and if he comes in and kind of gives me a show, gets me fired up, I'll shoot him. Um, and what I when I went to call him, I grabbed my grunt tube, and at this point it was a little bit windier, so I'm like, I'm gonna really blow on this grunt tube trying to get him to come over here. I blow on that tube, and I had the damn thing set to a doe bleat, and it just let out just the nastiest sounding doe bleat in the world, and I'm like, oh, I just butchered that, and I I put that grunt tube down. I put my binoculars. He never even heard me, so I grabbed tube again, slid it down to buck, and I hit it a couple times, and I watched him just working that ridge up there, and he wasn't paying any attention to me. And I'm like, all right, I gotta crack the horn, see what I'm gonna do. So I grabbed the horns. I just kind of down away from me. I just hit them again, not cracking them too loud, just sounding like a couple smaller bucks fighting. And I quick hung those up, pulled up the binoculars again. I look and I'm like, he heard that, and I could see him because he circled all the way basically up top on the other side, and and started coming back down. I'm like, okay, he's coming. Um, so I was in my mind at that point, I said, yep, I'm gonna kill him. I just watched him work the scrape. I've called him in. If he comes in and gives me a shot, I'm gonna kill him. He starts coming down the side of that ridge and he stops at the like 2/3 of the way up, looking across because he can see all the way across that middle ridge and then out to the field. And he's looking, and I'm like, okay, either he's not gonna see a deer over here on this middle ridge, or he's gonna think it came from back behind me on the CRP field and he's not gonna be able to see it. So he's gonna commit. And what he did was he hung up there for a minute, maybe just kind of scanning, and you see him flick his tail and he commits. And he drops down that ridge. And as I'm watching him, I'm thinking, okay, he's coming up this trail that's gonna be right in front of me. He's gonna be nose to nose with me, and I'm gonna have to wait for him to commit left or right before I can shoot. And what he ended up doing was he hit the bottom of that ravine and he worked back up into the wind a little bit and then came up on the trail to my right, which I was not expecting. I actually didn't know that there was a trail that led up that way. So I was a little bit scrambled because I had my camera, it's on the second trunk of the tree here to my right, and I have it, and I've got him on video coming up, and I'm like, okay, he's coming up. I'm gonna get my shot over here to the right. I grab my bow, and I've got the camera. And I'm like, I'm gonna shoot my camera screen if I leave the camera where it's at. So I quick spin my camera around the tree to the other side, which there's of course one like a couple leaves there or whatever that block the view of it, and that's just part of self-filming, but it is what it is. And at that point, so I got the camera around, and this is all happening pretty quick. I have my bow, I clip in, and I still have like I'm still pretty tight on that second trunk. So I end up having to like lean out on the stand, and I'm not leaned out like crazy far, but I'm like, I'm kind of out like this when I go to shoot, and he's up there. He looks on that middle ridge, right? He looks left, he looks right. He doesn't see anything on that ridge, so he starts heading back up into the wind like he's just going to go away because he's not seeing the fight that he was looking for. And right as he turned to go up away, I drew back, I stopped him, I settled my pin, and it was bang bang. I mean, it felt longer than what it was, but when I watch it back on the GoPro, I'm like, man, I drew, anchored, settled the pin, shot all in 10 seconds, maybe. I mean, it was just
Yeah, I
snappy.
know you're always in a panic. I almost
And
feel, I guess
and
that's
I
the thing that you say, like, you should just take your time.
yeah. And I didn't and I practice a lot during the summer shooting. And I'll practice those scenarios where I just shoot fast. Like I'll just pull back, I'll settle, I'll shoot. Um so but I thought it just felt longer than what it was. But when I drew back, I had more time than really what I was realizing. Because he wasn't really in a hurry. He was just kind of walking. I stopped him. He was, still looking, not really like not on edge by any means. But so when I drew back, I settled in, I put that pin on him, and he's slightly, very slightly quartering away. So I'm like, all right, I'm not right up on the shoulder. I'm gonna put it back a little bit. I touched off that trigger and I watched the arrow go, and man, it hit, and you can hear in the video, it's just like whack.
It was better than mine.
Yeah, you hear the pop immediately, and I'm like, yes. And as I'm watching him run off, because I only got a little bit of view where I could see him run off, I could see just blood just pumping out the side. I could see that my arrow was in the ground, and I'm like, done. Like he's gonna run 60 yards, be piled up and dead. So I was all fired up. I'm like, I haven't killed a buck in Missouri in 4 years. I've passed a lot of good deer. Finally, this year, I just said, if he gets me fired up, I'm gonna kill one. Um, and that one did. And he was a 3.5-year-old, and I think I'll just preface this and say we lost that farm. So I was
No
on like
harm,
the
no
last day
foul.
of my I was like last day of my trip. I'm like, he's a good buck. I'm gonna kill him. And he made me happy. So that's all I cared about. Um, but so after I do like my post interview stuff, and I'm sitting there, I'm trying to calm down. I'm like, I called my wife and I called my daughter, and I'm like, Daddy just shot a deer, whatever, and she's all excited. And um had fun with that or whatever. I'm like, okay, I got to text you and Stein, let you guys know I killed something. And I was thinking all week if I killed something, I was going to tell you guys that I shot a doe. So I did. I said, hey, just shot a doe. Stein, bring the deer cart over here at 9:30 or whatever time it was. We'll get her all cleaned up and out of here. So that was uh that was what I did. I texted you guys and then I waited, I think an hour. I waited until about 9:15. I got down. I'm like, I might as well go look at the arrow and just see what it looks like. And I got up to that arrow and there was blood on the arrow, but it wasn't like soaked like you would think from double lunging and hitting heart on a deer. But there was blood. But the thing that concerned me was instead of the arrow being like straight in the ground from the direction I shot, it was like cockeyed in the ground. And I'm like, did I hit something that I didn't see or what? The panic starts to set in because I didn't see the deer fall. And I'm like, I know I put a good shot on that deer. And I'm like, let's take up the track. If it's dead, it's dead. If not, like I should be able to tell by the blood how it looks, and I can just back out. I got on the blood trail, and I mean, it was a painted carpet of blood. It was just a swath of blood. I had no problem just walking and following it. And
Yeah, you said it was like somebody took a gallon of red paint and
yeah,
just basically walked with it and just dumped
dumped
it.
it out. Yeah, that's uh, we shoot
What
different
kind of
broad. We
yeah,
shoot
what kind
different
of broadheads do
broadheads,
you
but
use?
yeah, I'm using the G5 Mega Meat, and I've been using those for 3 years now, and I've killed 40, I think 4 deer with them. And every
Mhm.
single one, granted, shot placement is more important than broadhead, but every single one, it's just been crazy blood trails. Leaves a huge hole in the deer. So I've had really good experience with those. But um, so I ended up following the blood trail, and the deer's dead. He's laying down in the ravine. He's all piled up. He's been dead the whole hour. He just ran off and died immediately. I'm sure of it. So I don't do anything with him. I just leave him. I didn't even grab him. I'm just like, okay, I found him. I'm like, I'm gonna wait for Stein and we'll get that figured out. So I went back up the field, grabbed my pack, grabbed everything, waited for Stein to come with the deer cart, and I'm like, hey man, let's go grab this doe. Stein's all fired up. He gets so excited. He doesn't care what you shoot. He just gets excited and he's just happy to help. He's like one of the best guys you could have in camp. He's all excited and he's like, awesome snakers. Like he got one down. He's fired up. I'm like, all right, he's gonna like this when he walks up and sees it's a buck. And we start walking down to it, and we start dropping down. He's like, man, she really went down in here, and like, he's like, we're fighting through like the briar patch getting down there too. But we got down there, and right as we start to get above the deer, I've got the GoPro on, and I was so happy that I captured this because it's like one of the best clips from our entire trip. You just see Stein, his face just lights up, and he goes, "Holy shit, snakers!" And he's like, got this big smile on his face or whatever. And we celebrate a little bit, and he's like, "Dude, that's an awesome buck." Day 8, whatever. We've been grinding it out, so we were all fired up, and we drug him up out to the CRP field and got some pictures and video or whatever. Uh, with him, we're just sitting around chatting, telling the story and getting all excited. And I think by that time, you were coming out with the quad to help
Yep.
drag him out because we were like, let's drag him with a deer cart, and then we're like, Mike's already on his way. We'll wait a minute for you to show up. And when you came out, we had Stein stand in front of the deer, so you couldn't see the head. And right as you pull up, you're the same thing. You were all fired up as
I saw
well.
it. Yeah, it was funny. It was a good
Yeah, so
story.
yeah, so we were all jacked, and you know that
I
was
was
just a
happy.
fun experience.
I had somebody to share camp with them
hmm Yep.
since
So
I
we
was
had
rolling solo.
yeah, so we were both tagged out, and I was just excited with mine. I mean, I've been very open in our videos about my struggles with shooting, and I practice probably just as much as anyone else, like if not more
Practice more than
through
me.
throughout the summer. I mean, I shoot every single day. Um, but I've had some rough years where I missed deer. I I wounded that 12 point several years ago. Um, but I've been very open just that I've had some struggles with shooting, but when you put a shot like I did this year, when I put that shot on him, it's like the best feeling in the world. Thinking, okay, practice is paying off. Deer ran 60 yards, piled up.
It
It
all
was
comes
it, it was
together.
it was textbook. So I was really excited about that, and it was cool to have everything on video. Yeah, as we're doing this the past couple years, videoing everything, it's fun just to look back and be able to watch the hunt, relive the memories. So
Yeah, just to see. And I mean, like also I like it too. Just it is. It's fun. It's fun to look back and relive those hunts that you have because you don't always remember all the things that have happened. But I mean, even some of the bad ones, like the Indiana hunt that we had, that
yep,
was we were doing more like chatting than watching deer,
yeah,
or just more walking and sweating and trying to find the struggle of even seeing a deer sometimes, nevertheless
yep.
shooting one.
But that's what makes it fun, I think, is you get all the struggle that goes along with it, and like the rut hunt's a grind. I mean, you're up early every day, you're
Oh,
going to bed late, you got long drives to the properties, you're sitting in the stand all day.
especially
But
if somebody shoots a deer then at night, you're going to
yeah,
be up late. You
but
and I
then
did one track
yeah,
that took us, what, 4 or 5 hours
yeah, for all of it.
all day,
But
basically.
it's those kind of things that makes the trip so special. And you end up,
Yeah.
it's funny because we'll look back on these hunts, and you and I, whenever we talk, it's like we rarely talk about killing the deer or like the deer that we got. We end up just talking about like random things throughout the trip of like our failures or just the experiences that we had. And it's not like we rarely talk about like when we actually killed the deer. It's always something else in the trip.
Usually it's kind of reevaluating our stands
Yep.
movement, where we've been always talking about maybe putting a stand. So why don't we put a stand there, and
Yep.
where we should put it? And I mean, it's a lot of like putting different cameras out, and we're running cameras year round. And so it just all that stuff helps, and it's a culmination of all those things I think that you put together, and that's typically what we talk about. Previous years, what we saw, what we can do better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun time.
Yeah. So that's that was,
Okay.
I mean, that was my Missouri trip really in a nutshell. I mean, it was, I don't know that I could have asked for anything better. I mean, it was, saw plenty of deer.
It was a
You
hell of a
killed
year.
you killed a just an absolute slammer. Dude, that
I'm
made the
at
trip for
ease.
me.
I'm at ease now for the rest of my life.
Not
I don't.
until
I'm not. I
until
don't. I'm
next
not.
year.
Yeah, until next year. And then I obviously then went back down with Michael and BDB for some rifle and late archery. The rifle was fun. I had a good time. I basically just videotaped for Michael. We
Mhm.
saw a lot of deer. I think we were a little bit of a cluster too because we were so everybody was kind of just focused on hunting and during that archery season. And again, the work trip, that's when we put that stuff out. But we weren't really, the prepared, again, unprepared. It seems like the
Yeah.
theme of this whole season. But still didn't deter us. I know he had one opportunity. What was it? Second to last day, he could have shot a 7 point, and it was a decent low seven, but he was hoping for something a little bit bigger. The final day, BDB and I on archery were tearing down stands, obviously on the property we lost, and so we kicked some bucks up to him. So he did. I'll say this: Michael didn't have any shortage of opportunities. He was almost shot
Yeah.
the deer that you passed like 6 times on, which had, I think, what was it, the double brow?
Yeah, he had like a 10-inch double brow
Yeah.
tine. He's wide. He's a awesome 3-year-old.
Michael he actually pulled back on him. He
I
actually
would
had
have
pulled back
cried.
on him.
I
And
wouldn't I wouldn't have been upset. It would have just been like, oh man, I thought he made it through. But
I
uh
thought he knew that we were not taking a buck of that.
yeah,
But then, he hasn't seen much of Michigan. He gets down there, he sees, I'll give him credit. He didn't just fling an arrow. And I have a lot. I've always told him, do not take a risky shot and wound a buck and running off and losing them. I didn't want to, and he didn't. I just didn't feel comfortable taking that shot.
yeah.
Small window. He said he could have probably snuck it in there, but he's like, I just don't, I'm not a seasoned to take a shot like that. And I said, well, that's
I,
good.
yeah, it's tough for anyone to make a hard shot like that, but yeah, good on him for
BDB,
not forcing it through.
I think it was really interesting. I think as we wrap this up and we talk about that late season, I think everybody, and I think I mentioned it in my video a little bit. I don't know if I did it over my rifle, but in my archery one, that everybody, you were even saying like, man, it's going to get really cold. These deer will be moving.
Hmm.
Yeah, they did. They moved towards wherever there was ag it left at. And, we didn't really see, I didn't see any big bucks. You didn't really see much rutting activity other than the first few days Michael and I were there when it was like in the 40s and 50s. And we saw one hunt that we saw a ton of deer, saw a heck of a 6 point, and that was a nice buck. Will be a nice buck next year. Hopefully he grows more than just 6 points. But, when the cold weather hit, I mean,
Well,
when it was cold,
it was frigid cold, right? You guys are on like the single digits.
single digits in the mornings and then only getting into the 20s in the afternoon for the afternoons. And so I just saw deer shut down almost like they almost yarded up. They were going to the ag. No rutting activity, very little.
Yeah,
And
they went from rut to food really fast from the way you were
yeah,
telling me.
like a blink of an eye. Like we went from rut one day and then it's slowly you saw these temps in about a 24, 48 hour period drop. And we just stopped seeing any rutting activity and it was all food
Yeah,
focused.
that's crazy.
And it was just nuts, but it was bitter cold. That was for sure. That was the coldest I've seen it in since I was down there several years ago when it was single digits during rifle
Yeah.
season. But
So
then,
that was really the wrap on your guys'
yeah,
Thanksgiving trip, right?
yep. And so it was fun. It was nice to have Baker down there. Get him an opportunity to get down there and do a little archery hunting. He didn't. I don't think he really seen anything that got his blue skirt up,
Hmm.
which is unfortunate. But hopefully he can make it down there with this year for us.
Yeah.
Just in the rut season, it'd be good for him.
Yeah. So I mean, it was a good year overall for how really
Quality.
it was just a weird year. I mean, we weren't as prepared as we normally were, and uh, everything kind of worked out. Which, you know, sometimes you're gonna have years like that. Life gets in the way, but
Yeah.
I think
This year is a little different.
yeah, I think that this year, we can touch on this before we end, but I think this year is going to be a big year for us. I mean, we got some big hunts planned. We draw Iowa this
Yep.
year. We've got Missouri. Obviously Michigan's in the mix for you. I've
Yep.
got I've got Michigan late season when we go up for Christmas, and then I'll have Arkansas mixed in early because
So got a little
they got
Indiana maybe too.
yeah. So I think as far as we go for next year, we got what, 5, 6 states we're going to be covering between the two of us, and really high expectations. I think it should be good. So it'll definitely be fun. We're going to be a little bit more prepared this year. Definitely things
God,
will
I
be
hope
planned
so.
out a little better. Um,
Try not to have
but
any
it
heart
should,
attacks.
yeah, that'd be a big one. I'm not having another kid this year, so I'm
That's
all good
big
there.
too. So we're getting all that out of the way.
Yeah.
So for the
So there'll be
2020.
yeah. So I figure we'll talk more about our plans for 2025 here as the season gets closer, and
Yeah.
maybe when we're together shed hunting here in a couple weeks, we'll sit down and talk about our plans for 2025 and see what's going on. But yeah,
Can't wait.
I think
That's a
that's
wrap.
a wrap for our 2024 season. It was fun. We had a good time.
It's a memorable one
Yeah,
for several
yeah,
reasons.
yeah. So we had
Well,
an absolute blast. But yeah, I think I'll end it here with just saying,
okay.
thanks to anyone who's watching this video and stuck around for the whole time. Uh, we have a lot of fun putting these videos together for you. Even this one's a lot different style from what we normally do, but we thought it'd be fun to recap our season as a whole and get Mike and I together and just shoot the shit. We do this normally. We talk on the phone all the time, and
Also do video
we
conference.
figured let's just do it over a video call and recap the season so everyone can get a idea of the behind the scenes of everything that went on. So thanks everyone for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy watching this content. We appreciate it. And you got anything else to add, Mike?
I do not. You've covered it all, buddy.
Good deal. All right, man. Good catching up with you. Talk to you later.
Yep. Sounds good,
All right.
dude.